What is going on, New York Giant fans? Welcome back to a live edition of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast. Appreciate y'all coming back. Whoever may come in here during the replay or the live stream, hit the like button, subscribe, do all the good stuff, share out, turn on post notifications so you know when the live stream pops for video drops. Appreciate y'all coming back. We are closing on 1,600. We're still a ways away from that, but definitely hit the like button, subscribe to all the good stuff. Also, give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts if you have not already. Appreciate you guys. Shout outs to MH. No, this is not a premiere, MH. This is live. So I'll be any questions that you guys have Giants related, I'll definitely be able to answer. This is not a premiere. But shouts to Barbara, Daniel Berry Sports, and MH for being here. We appreciate y'all. As far as content goes, the rest of the week, Sunday we got a live stream for you guys. 2 live streams, matter of fact. Mets in the afternoon and the Yankees at night. We got a Big Boys and Big Apple podcast next Monday in regards to the NFL, making all sorts of predictions. Tuesday we have an interview. I don't know what time we're going to be doing the show because we are bringing on a Giants beat reporter. Usually this is done every year, and then Saturday it will be premiere of the Big Blue in the Bronx podcast previewing the Cowboys game. So we are just a ways away right now from football. But appreciate Mr. Angry John in the chat. But we have a couple of things to go over, man. We have a couple of things to go over. Obviously, 53-man cutdowns were made within the last few days. The Giants traded for another Buffalo Bill, which isn't really a surprise. What role will he have? Practice squad was formed. The Giants have made a couple of moves there. I'm going to give out preseason, not preseason, but like pre-regular season position grades, and you guys can follow me along on that one. But once again, shouts to Angry John. MH says he went to yesterday's Mets game. It was wild. Yeah, I believe they won in extra innings, if I'm not mistaken. Who is our best wide receiver right now? This is a good question because it's really a toss-up between we could actually make it 4 players because in my opinion, there's not a ton of like big-time talent in the room. But Hodgins was there last year for the Giants. You have Paris Campbell, who is a sneaky guy. Let me tell you something, guys. He might be one of the sneakiest receivers on this team this year. You got Darren Waller. Obviously, guys are going to focus on Slayton, Jalen Hyatt, the speedy rookie out of Tennessee, and Saquon Barkley out of the backfield. But, man, I mean, Paris Campbell, he can do some things this year for the Giants. So he's on a 1-year contract, so he could be part of that conversation. Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton, and Isaiah Hodgins. I mean, really any of those 4 you could say. So I'm going to be honest with you, MH. I'm not going to answer that right now because, to be honest with you, I really don't know how to answer that. The Giants have a couple of talented wide receivers in the room. So with that being said, I'm going to go right into this trade. How we're going to break it down is how you guys see it on screen right here. The Boogie Basham trade, what the practice squad looks like, the waiver claims that the Giants did not make. They actually claimed one guy or attempted to, but he did not fall into favor for them. He was actually claimed by another team. Swing tackle worries, and then position grades at the end. So this may not be a long podcast, but of course, next week we got you next Tuesday. So the New York Giants actually did another trade a couple of days ago. I believe this was on Tuesday, I believe it was on Tuesday. They traded for Boogie Basham. His real name is Carlos Basham. He is a third-year man out of Wake Forest. He is 25 years old. He's 6'3". He slimmed in the 270s this offseason. I was scouting him in the 21 draft along with guys like Rashad Weaver, Azeez Ojulari. I'm like, the Giants need an edge. So, we got to attack the edge somehow, right? And I started scouting Boogie Basham. Like, this guy really does not fit what the Giants want to do in terms of a 3-4. He was more of a 4-3 defensive end, which is the role he did play in Buffalo. But now he comes over here. The Giants sent over, I believe it was a 6th-round pick of 2025, and then they gave us a 7th in 2025. So just a pick swap. The Basham trade was made because Zimenez stunk, and he's going to replace him as outside depth. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of things to get into. He's the 4th edge in the room, and it's interesting because the Giants only have 4 edges. Now, there still can be roster shakeups. There still can be moves made. I mean, the Giants made 2 moves today in terms of the practice squad. We'll go over that. But Boogie Basham and Isaiah Simmons, those trades definitely ousted a lot of players from their home positions and then them getting cut. Now, Isaiah Simmons, that really goes more towards Darian Beavers getting cut, which we'll talk about the surprise of that. He's on the practice squad right now. O'Shane Ximines is also on the practice squad. Boogie Basham, once again, that trade kind of said, okay, Tamon Fox is not going to be on the active roster, which who knows? The Giants, once again, could shake up some roster spots, put one of those guys on the roster, make it 5 edges. They have 6 defensive linemen right now. So, once again, it's all about what Joe Schoen is planning on doing and all that sort of stuff. But let's go into Boogie Basham's career and what he's going to be for the New York Giants. So, in his career over the last 2 seasons, he's played 23 games. He played 15 last year. The year before, he played 8. I'm going to start with his rookie season. He had 2.5 sacks, 4 tackles for loss, 3 quarterback hits, 6 pressures sent. Actually, on no blitzes, or at least I'm reading this wrong. But once again, Pro Football Reference, it does track blitzes. So he was sent on 0 blitzes. But he was normally a part of the 3-4-man rush when he did get in, but played 39% of the snaps in those 8 games. His second season, he played 15 games with the Buffalo Bills, 1 interception. I believe that was off Matt Stafford, 2 sacks, 2 pass deflections, 1 tackle for loss, 19 total tackles, 5 quarterback hits, sent on 2 blitzes, 2 sacks, and 11 quarterback pressures, and also 39% of the snaps. So it increased a little bit because he played 7 more games, but the snap percentage, the snap share is still around the same. And he was battling with guys for defensive line rotations. Von Miller obviously came over there as of recent. You had AJ Epineza, whatever the hell his name is, who was a pick out of Iowa a few years ago. You have Gregory Rousseau, who's came on as of late. And there's just been guys shifting in and out. And Basham, it just seemed like didn't really fit there what they wanted to do, and that he was going to get, again, another low-end share of the snaps. And he's a second-round pick. And, of course, sometimes with these contending teams, you really don't give 2 craps about what they do in the second round, as long as they're contending. But Basham, in this case, for Buffalo fans, yes, he was a miss. Now, Basham did say in his presser, his opening presser coming to the Giants when he was at his locker, Joe Schoen was a big, big part in the reason why Basham was drafted to the Buffalo Bills. And at Wake Forest, Boogie Basham did have 145 pressures and 23 sacks and 1,144 pass rushing snaps. So, what is his role looking like? But first, we got to talk about what player he is. What is he, a run defender? Is he a pass rusher? He is actually more of a power rusher. But with that on the table, he's more of a run defender, and that's what probably he's going to be in a New York Giants uniform. He's probably going to end up being that Jihad Ward type guy. Jihad Ward is on a 1-year contract, so he's not necessarily confirmed to come back next year. The Giants did some due diligence and said, hey, listen, we're going to bring in the vet Jihad Ward, and Jihad Ward was obviously solid in his role last year. Funny enough, both of them are former second-round picks that really didn't work out. So similar guys. I think Basham has a higher ceiling. I think he could maybe get 3, 4, maybe 5 sacks a season. But where he's going to show up most is the running game, because you look at the edge room right now. You have Kayvon Thibodeau, who's not a terrible run defender, but he's not this great run defender. Azeez Ojulari is not good versus the run. And then you have Jihad Ward, who is a good run defender, and once again can be compared to the type of player Boogie Basham is. And he's also a power rusher too, but he's not, 3 sacks, I think, is the most he's had in his career. And yeah, you could say, okay, you're not going to get too many sacks in Wink Martindale's system. The most that's ever been accumulated, I believe, is Matt Judon in 2019 with the Ravens. But once again, coming back to the point is the Giants needed some sort of a run stuffing presence really in the edge room, because it could be fine and well. Listen, the Giants have 6 defensive linemen. You could have it totally played well up the middle with Jordan Riley and A'Shawn Robinson and Raheem Nunez-Roches and then Dexter Lawrence, and you have Leonard Williams, whatever. But if you go to the outside, like Kenneth Walker, we face him in week 4. Tony Pollard, I don't know if he's going to be 100% healthy, but Deuce Vaughn, if they stretch that to the outside, the Giants might be screwed depending on how linebacking play is. And, Bobby Okereke came over for the New York Giants, and I'm not expecting him to be Blake Martinez. And, of course, you have Isaiah Simmons, who's not a finished product, by the way. He's going to be molded into a role for the New York Giants. He loves to rush the pass, which that's more on the edge rushing side, but he is part of that inside linebacker room. So as far as Boogie Basham goes, he's an addition for the New York Giants in terms of his role, in terms of the player he is. He's going to be a run defender. I will bet that he maybe gets 1, 2, maybe even 3 sacks this year, but it's not going to be this, oh my God, he's in a big role type guy. No. He really doesn't have to live up to his second round hype that Buffalo picked him with. As I said, former second round pick. He doesn't have to live up to that. Now he's just trying to be a role player and stick with the Giants, I think, for the next 2 years, because he's got 21, 22, 23, and 24. So he's got this season. He's got next season. I think $1 million flat across the board for Carlos Basham. So I like the move. It's a low risk, high reward type move. I'm kind of surprised the New York Giants didn't do more in the edge room. They did keep 2 guys on the practice squad as of right now, O'Shane Ximines and Mon Fox. So we'll see what goes in terms of that. But that's my analysis really on the Boogie Basham trade. Now, let's talk about the cuts, the practice squad forming, and also how did I do on my predictions? So these players were cut and they were never brought back to the practice squad. And some of them actually went elsewhere. So number 1 is Jashaun Corbin. And this guy had a very good summer, mind you. He was rotating with the ones. He was probably the best back out there, despite the stats not saying so. He is now with the practice squad of the Carolina Panthers. You guys know Tony, who comes in here once in a while. He is actually Jashaun Corbin's cousin. And I, let him know on Twitter. I said, good luck to your cousin in Carolina, of course. So, he's on the Panthers practice squad. I knew he was going to get a home somewhere. The Giants did make a roster decision in terms of running back. They did keep Gary Brightwell, which we'll talk about in a bigger section, really, when we're talking about the 53-man roster. But he is now on the practice squad of the Carolina Panthers. Darren Evans and Zion Gilbert. Zion Gilbert was waived with an injury designation, and Darren Evans, he was just flat out cut. 2 guys that really never had an inside shot at making the roster. David Sills is now a Denver Bronco. He is on their practice squad, which it's interesting a little bit because Davis Webb is the QB coach over there, if you guys don't know. But I knew he was going to get cut. I thought he was actually going to stay on the roster in terms of the practice squad because Daniel Jones and him seem to have this rapport that a lot of guys that the Giants have brought in, it really has not been the same. With that being said, best of luck to David Sills. He was here since 2019. He was actually originally a Buffalo Bill, but Sills, once again, so long. Best of luck in a different area. Shocked they cut Beavers. Yeah, we'll definitely get into that, Mr. Angry John. That definitely shocked me as well a little bit. Colin Johnson was cut. On my initial prediction, I had him making the roster. And then on the prediction I had after the Jets game, I said, this guy's not going to make the roster. And it seemed pretty evident that the Giants really didn't want him back because he's coming off an ACL. He didn't really have the same type of hype. He didn't have the same type of energy. He did last preseason, and Brian Daboll said after he was waived. Now, at that time, they still could have said, let's see what this guy does through waivers, and we could possibly bring him on the practice squad, but Brian Daboll pretty much dismissed any type of hype of bringing him back. So shouts to Colin Johnson. Hope he finds a home elsewhere. Sean Harlow, who they signed late because J.C. Hassenauer ended up on IR for the entire season. He is now with the Cowboys practice squad, played decent. He's an average center at best, played with the Cardinals for a couple of seasons, played with the Falcons, so now he's on their practice squad. In terms of the 2 O-linemen that did a lot of damage to the New York Giants, Wyatt Davis, he's injured, so I'm not going to speak that too much bad on him. I think he had a sprained ankle or something with an ankle injury. Thank God it was not an ACL for his sake, but him and Corey Cunningham were cut. The Giants needed to bolster depth and get rid of some dead weight, and those 2 guys were dead weight. Speaking of dead weight, they cut 3 defensive linemen as well, Brandon Bryant, Donovan Jeter, and Kevin Atkins. Those guys, they really didn't do much in the in the games at all. Also, they cut Kobe Smith, who I'm surprised they didn't bring back on the practice squad because I thought Kobe Smith actually had a very solid preseason. You would see him and Jordan Riley team up for tackles and stuff like that. It's not like he was out there all getting sacks and stuff like that. Habakkuk Baldonado, I'm surprised this guy really hasn't been claimed yet because I think there is some potential to be unlocked. He technically had 2 sacks in the Lions preseason game, but the one was taken away with the bullshit roughing the passer. But I really liked him coming out of Pitt. He was my undrafted free agent to watch. And unfortunately, he did not make the roster. It was pretty much quiet and silent after the Lions game. To Sean Bauer, he made some nice plays in the preseason, had a quarterback hit or two, a pass deflection or two, and was really effective in the running game. But the Giants elected to upgrade at different areas. Obviously, Boogie Basham coming in was one of the signs that Sean Bauer, Oshane Ximines, Tamon Fox were not going to be on the roster. And then long snapper Cam Lyons. I mean, he could have been kept on the practice squad, but I guess Thomas McGahee and Joe Shane, all those different guys, they said, look, we got to prioritize the practice squad for some other guys as well. So before we get to the practice squad, I do want to talk about my predictions. So I got 46 out of 53 right. I had 47 right last year. I want to talk about the guys I had right last year, and actually the guys I had wrong last year, and now the guys I have wrong this year. So last year, I thought Khalil Dorsey was going to make the roster, ended up going to Tamon Fox. I thought Trenton Thompson was going to make the roster. Oshane Ximines did. Thompson didn't. Austin Calitro, I thought he was not going to make the roster. Quincy Roche, I thought he was going to make the roster, so it was kind of a swap there. I thought Cam Brown was going to miss the roster. I thought Andrew Adams was going to make it. I was wrong there. Max Garcia ended up making the initial 53. I was wrong there. He made the initial 53. I thought Jamil Douglas was going to make it instead of him. Wrong there. And then Jalen Holmes, I thought was going to make it because of his connection with Andre Patterson. And I thought Nick Williams was going to miss it, but Nick Williams was actually a solid defensive lineman for us last year before he went down with the bicep injury. Now this year, I thought Aaron Robinson was going to come off the PUP list. That is not the case. He's on the PUP for the first 6 games of the season, I believe. So they're really in no rush to bring him back. That's where Nick McLeod makes the roster because he started practicing today, which is a good thing because the Giants need depth at safety. They need depth at corner. Otherwise, Tamon Fox, I thought he was going to make the roster. I ended up being wrong on that part. You can't really predict Boogie Basham making the roster because sometimes there are teams like the Giants that will trade because they don't have a high enough spot in the waiver wire. To Sean Bauer, as I mentioned, I thought he was going to make the roster, or at least the initial 53. Didn't happen. Tyree Phillips, I thought he was going to make the roster over Matt Peart. Was not the case, and I said Tyree Phillips was going to make the roster because I'm like, okay, they will at least keep him on the initial because Matt Peart stunk in the preseason. And going forward with that, Tyree Phillips is a veteran body, and they could at least give him time the 2 weeks before the regular season. I was wrong there. I thought Jamison Crowder would have made the roster. Was not the case. Gary Brightwell ended up getting a spot. Sean Harlow, I thought he was going to make the roster. Was wrong on that note. Shane Lemieux ended up getting his spot, which is a little bit of a shocker, but he played decent in the preseason. And then finally, as well, Bobby McCain, I thought he was not going to make the roster. He ended up making the roster. Same thing with Cam Brown. And Darian Beavers got cut, which Angry John mentioned in the comments a little while ago. So I was 46 of 53, which I think if we're going to be technical about is a percentage of 86.7. And technically, that's not a bad percentage. Also, as well, that's how many guys are active on game day, 46, sometimes 48 if you bring up 2 from the practice squad. And speaking of the practice squad, let's go into it. So here are the players currently on the New York Giants practice squad. They did make some additions and subtractions as of the last 24 hours. Oshane Ximines, a little bit surprised they brought him back. I know Wink likes him, but at the same time, I thought, okay, they're finally done with this guy. But I thought he was brought back for depth reasons. Same thing can be applied to Tamon Fox. As I mentioned earlier, I thought Tamon Fox was going to make the roster. I thought he had a solid preseason, but I guess not good enough with the coaching staff, and they decided he's a practice squad guy. Deontay Johnson didn't do much in the preseason. I was really looking for him to sprout in the roles that he got in the time he got to play because of the inside linebacker depth until Isaiah Simmons came in. Ended up not doing much, but he's on the practice squad right now. It was originally Jamon Green, the rookie free agent out of Michigan, who made the practice squad. He was cut from the original roster. If you guys don't know that name, he gave up the touchdown to Garrett Wilson, but he was released today. He was released today off of the practice squad for BYU undrafted free agent Caleb Hayes, who was most recently with the Jaguars. And some positives and negatives with Caleb Hayes because, with these guys, and I feel like I'm going to do it every time, whether it's on the practice squad or the active roster with like undrafted free agents and stuff. I'm going to profile them a little bit. Caleb Hayes, some stuff about him: can play, press, and trail technique, stays glued to vertical routes, and can also derail a receiver's trail with a press punch. So he's good in press man coverage, which is a good thing. The problem with him is he's got no interceptions. When you go back to his college stats, he played 4 years, really 5, but 4 years. First 3 at Oregon State, the next 2 at BYU. No interceptions, and that's not necessarily a good thing because, hey, listen, it means either you're dropping a lot of pass deflections that should be interceptions, or you're not putting yourself in a position where you need to be for the ball to fall in your hands. And that's one of the problems that Caleb Hayes has, is he doesn't necessarily have good positioning, whether the route is in front of him. It comes to, turning around when the receiver is right there, turning around to the ball. So that's just another one right there. But again, he's a practice squad guy. It's not necessarily something to look into all the way. Shout outs to, holy crap, this is an interesting nickname, the Entertainer Talking Drugs. He did get cut. He did get cut. And I'm actually going to talk about that in just a second because I think that's a good talking point. Shouts to Evan. But yeah, they did cut Darian Beavers. He's on the practice squad now. So we moved to a couple other different guys. Amani Oruwariye, I'm surprised he made it back, but I guess it's a corner depth move. Didn't really have a good preseason. Really didn't have a good camp. I thought Giants reporters really gassed him up. He wasn't very good. Tyree Phillips was the original swing tackle on the roster. Not the roster, excuse me, the practice squad. But, however, today he was released for another Ravens offensive tackle. His name is Jalen Thomas, UDFA at SMU. From what I read from a Ravens fan on Twitter, is he played mostly center at camp for the Baltimore Ravens during the preseason, and he's also a very good run blocker. Didn't do all that bad. So the Giants just acquiring some depth. They originally tried to put a claim in for Nick Broker, who was a 7th round pick out of Ole Miss by the Buffalo Bills, but he ended up going elsewhere to the Houston Texans. But Tyree Phillips was released. Jalen Thomas, some stuff on him, versatility. He played all 5 positions at SMU. So I think one of the things with the New York Giants is they like guys that are versatile, and Jalen Thomas is that. Solid footwork, solid in pass pro. He's able to get to the linebackers at the second level. That's very good on duo plays for the running game. He's not a great puller, which is a little bit of a shocker. Obviously, you'll get different guys with different weaknesses and strengths, but the Giants like to pull. Zudu is very athletic. Lewinsky's very athletic, despite what we think of him. Schmitz will probably be in that game, and we'll see what Marcus McKeithen does, but he's not a great puller. Upper body strength is a question because he is pushed back in the pocket sometimes, and balance issues as well. So, once again, it's for a guy on the practice squad, so you're not really worried about much of anything. Hey, he is in the chat. He goes, hey, I almost missed the show. I was watching Hard Knocks, and I fell asleep. LOL. I think that's a shot at Mr. John, but all is good. Hey, what's up, my man? Almighty's in the chat. He goes, what's good? Why did we release James Robinson? Well, I'm going to be honest with you. That's also another cut the New York Giants made, James Robinson. In terms of him, he was very slow. He was very slow in the preseason. If you watch the first 2 games, if you were at camp, a lot of people would tell you he was not 100%, or he's still like getting hampered by that injury. Now, granted, yes, he did make 2 very nice runs against the New York Jets, but still, it was really not enough to keep him on the roster. And he really didn't have any special teams background. So James Robinson, hope he finds a home somewhere else. But once again, I thought he was just a camp body, just in case Saquon decided to cut out of it. Tyree Jackson from the Eagles. This guy's a very tall dude, 6'7". I know there's obviously that thing on Twitter now that, he was rated above Daniel Jones coming out of college because he was originally a quarterback. But I think he played for SMU. I think that was a college he played for, something like that. But he's 6'7". He's a tight end, probably just a developmental guy. He was originally an undrafted free agent with Buffalo. Yeah, so he came out of Buffalo. So he was a local guy as far as um, the Buffalo Bills are concerned, but he was with the Eagles recently, and now he's a New York Giant. Tommy DeVito, which shouldn't be a surprise, liked him coming back, liked what he did in the preseason. I know a lot of Giants fans did. Should have kept Corbin. Yeah, I mean, listen, shout out to my man Jonathan. Yeah, no, listen, I would have liked to keep Corbin. He did have special teams value, but I guess in this case, the New York Giants thought, hey, listen, Brightwell offers more for us. LMAO, Alex always gets my corny jokes, and Entertainer Talking Drugs says Robinson is trash. Yeah, well, if you want to be that way about it, which is the truth, I mean, Robinson was very good for the Giants. That's what it was. And then I'm going to talk about this in just a second. This being the cutting of Darian Beavers. Now, I thought originally, a lot of people did, coming into camp, it's going to be Darian Beavers alongside a guy in Bobby Okereke. And I thought that way. I didn't have huge expectations for Darian Beavers. I didn't think he was going to be Rookie of the Year or something like that, whatever. I know there were certain expectations that were high for Darian Beavers amongst Giant fans. I didn't really think that way. But as you started going through camp, as you started going through preseason games, you recognize that Micah McFadden was really starting to win that role as inside linebacker too. And Darian Beavers looked a little slow, couldn't explode like he used to. So that's, I guess, what really, I wouldn't say ticked the Giants off, but made them a little worried. And the inside linebacker depth generally isn't good, or at least wasn't good at the time. They trade for Isaiah Simmons. That changes up the puzzle here to where, at least at that time, you would think Carter Coughlin, Cam Brown, one of those guys are cut, because at the time, with the Jets game, you had Okereke, you had Simmons, you had Brown, you had Coughlin, you had McFadden, you had Beavers. So you had 6 inside linebackers, and I believe the Giants kept 5, which we'll get to the active roster in a few minutes. But you thought, okay, this gives Darian Beavers and Micah McFadden time just to come into their own, because they're 5th, 6th round picks from last year. They're not expected to do much of anything. So they cut Beavers. Not necessarily too much of a shocker to me, because if you guys remember the name Ryan Connolly, he came off an ACL injury a few years ago. He tore his ACL in 2019 against Washington. 2020, he was cut by the Giants by a different coaching staff in Joe Judge's coaching staff rather than James Betcher and Pat Shermer, who drafted him, which was a little surprise. I know that I was mad about it. A lot of Giant fans were mad about it because the alternative was Devontae Downs, and Devontae Downs wasn't a good linebacker. But I understand it now. It is again, a little surprising because he was a Joe Shane, Brian Dable, Wink Martindale. He was this regime's draft pick. So, yes, it is surprising. But on the practice squad, depending on how they feel about the guy, Carter Coughlin earned his spot on specials. He also earned his spot generally as a linebacker because he played really well against the Jets. Cam Brown obviously earned his spot via specials. And then you have Simmons and the rest of the linebacker crew coming in there. But Darian Beavers, in terms of him, I guess it's just going to be a trial period. I thought he was going to get claimed. Obviously, he did not. No Giants players were claimed to my knowledge. Obviously, some signed with different practice squads, but Beavers did not get claimed. It wasn't too much of a shock that he was cut, but it still was a little bit surprising in terms of that. Glad they kept DeVito. Wished they kept Alex's favorite receiver, Sills. LOL to that one. He once again now has a home in Denver. DeVito could be a future backup because he played better than Taylor this preseason in training camp. Yeah, listen, definitely next year he's going to be competing for that QB2 spot. I don't see the Giants cutting him unless he's bad in practice. He's going to be playing scout QB against defenses, and he's going to be acting like the opposing quarterback that they would be facing that Sunday, Thursday, Monday. But as far as Tommy DeVito goes, Tyrod Taylor's contract is up after this year. They were not cutting him. I realized that. And coming in with an undrafted free agent as your backup quarterback, a little spicy, a little weird, because you're in a season where you need to compete and stuff like that. Beavers can continue to develop and slowly ease his way back on the roster. Yeah, there's always time. I mean, the Giants can definitely give him a second chance, but this is a season where the New York Giants really can't fuck around. They got to go out there. They got to replace guys that aren't ready yet. And tough decisions have to be made. And I think next year is going to be a year like last year's Jets, where a ton of players get claimed because the Giants are still flowing through guys in the system, and good players could get cut. I'd say the reason I was shocked because they were very thin at linebacker before they made those moves. Yeah, that's the reason I was shocked, but I guess they decided very differently. Some other practice squad adds: Alex Cook, who was solid in the first preseason game. The next two, he really didn't show up, but he has a special teams value. He's more of a box safety. He's kept on the practice squad. Cole Beasley, I thought he was going to be on the active roster at first. He was not on my initial prediction, so I was right in that sense. But with that on the table, I thought, okay, maybe they just cut him and bring him back. But Beasley is the injury. He's on the practice squad. They didn't want to really give a roster spot to somebody who's probably not going to play week one. So there's that. Ryder Anderson, who right now is injured. They cut him for DJ Davidson, Jordan Riley, and all those different guys on the active roster. So there's that. Not really a surprise to me. Ryan Jones they kept, and then 3 new guys. Dennis Houston, last year, who was an undrafted free agent for the Cowboys, played with the Cowboys this preseason, mostly against the Jaguars. Did not make the roster. Don't know much about him. Jalen Mayfield is the one I probably know the most about. Not a good pass protector. I know some were like very weirded out by the move. He's on the practice squad, so in my opinion, I'm not going to get too amped up in a bad way about it. Former 3rd-round pick of the Atlanta Falcons. That was in 2021, so he only had 2 years. But I think the Giants can make him into maybe a solid swing tackle at best. At worst, probably just a camp body. And then Tywan Jones, who's a veteran. He's been in this league a while, mostly a special teams guy, sort of the Nate Ebner, Matt Slater type for the New York Giants to keep on this roster. So we're going to go to the active roster next and then talk about the no waiver claims and then position grades. But I do want to talk about this first. We are now sponsored by SeatGeek. Yes, if you want to go to a concert, a Giants game, a Jets game, whatever, now you can have our assistance in terms of that. You can get $20 off your entire ticket order with the promo code Big Blue in the Bronx. That's Big Blue in the Bronx, like the podcast name, like the channel name, and all that good stuff. Once again, $20 off your entire order with the promo code Big Blue in the Bronx. So anyway, let's get to this active roster. I actually might be able to pull it up on here for you guys. I think I could do it. Let's see if I can. I can. So they didn't put Boogie Basham on the roster because I think either the Giants social media team fucked up or they just said, look, we got to wait for this guy's physicals. But here is the active roster for the New York Football Giants. Quarterback Daniel Jones, quarterback Tyrod Taylor. No surprises in that area as far as that goes. Running back Saquon Barkley, Eric Gray, Matt Breida. No surprises in that area, but Gary Brightwell was kept. He was injured all of the preseason, and Eric Gray and Jaden Mickens and all different guys were taking turns at punt returner and kick returner. But Brightwell originally was part of the kick returner team, and I think he really keeps that role. He shares it with Eric Gray, so we'll see what happens. But they honestly, I guess, like this guy's special teams abilities. So he sticks for another year. Wide receiver, not too many surprises. It was just whether Cole Beasley was going to make it, whether a guy like Colin Johnson was going to make it, whether Jameson Crowder was going to make it. You know these 6 receivers were staying, but also one of the questions you did ask yourself is Wan'Dale Robinson going to get activated? Now, we don't know if he's ready for week 1. They could always say, okay, one of the 7 inactives we have to do, we're going to place Wan'Dale Robinson as a healthy, well, not a healthy scratch, but as a scratch because of injury and him coming off of the injury. So Paris Campbell, Isaiah Hodgins, Jalen Hyatt, Wan'Dale Robinson, Sterling Shepard, and Darius Slayton. I know some were doubting Sterling Shepard making this roster, but it wasn't really a doubt in my mind. Tight end, Daniel Bellinger, Lawrence Cager, and Darren Waller. I think the Giants could maybe still make a move at 3rd tight end, but Lawrence Cager's hurt right now. Not a surprise he made the roster. I thought he was always that number 3 tight end going in. I think the Giants needed some sort of a pass catcher behind Bellinger and behind Waller. Ryan Jones is on the practice squad, so we'll see if they make some more shuffling in terms of blocking tight ends. The O-line, this is where it gets shifty a little bit. So you do have Ben Bredesen, Josh Azudu, Mark Lewinsky, Evan Neal, Andrew Thomas. Those are your starters. In terms of backups, also got to mention JMS. Backups, Marcus McKeithen, Shane Lemieux, and Matt Parrott. So not surprised McKeithen made it, obviously. I'll go back to the graphic in a second here. Hold on, let me just fix this. Okay. So I'll go back to the graphic in a second. But in terms of the O-line, yeah, it was a little surprising that Shane Lemieux just, made the roster and all. I think the Giants secretly, once again, like him, kind of like Brightwell, because he's a guy that has played center. He's played guard at two different spots. So as of right now, I guess they're going to stick with him. He didn't play that bad in the preseason. And the reason why I don't have too much of an issue with him making the roster is I know a lot of people are saying last year, the ankle, the foot was still bothering him. That's not an excuse for me because he played like garbage and he's gotten so many chances. He still hasn't improved in pass protection. You can see that in the preseason a little bit, but because Shane Lemieux most likely won't get too much playing time unless Zudu, Glowinski, or Ben Bredesen go down. And then also behind that, you have Marcus McKeithen, who can play offensive guard and is slowly molding his way into the NFL. And I believe either McKeithen or Lemieux will be inactive week 1 because there's no way they probably have all 9 linemen as active. So we go to the defense. Let's go to that. We got 6 defensive linemen. We got DJ Davidson, Dexter Lawrence, Raheem Nunez-Roches, Jordan Riley, Ashawn Robinson, and Leonard Williams. My only surprise for some would be DJ Davidson because there was some doubt about him making the roster. There really was. Because of him being injured, coming off that ACL injury. Is he coming off the PUP? He did come off the PUP, but played barely, if at all, in the last 2 preseason games. So DJ Davidson comes in. I liked him. Honestly, I didn't know what to think of him coming out of college last year out of Arizona State, but he played well for the Giants in the preseason, played well when the Giants needed him in the running game. The first 5 weeks of the season was better than Justin Ellis, Henry Mondo, Vernon Butler, and all those different guys. So happy that DJ Davidson's 6 along with the New York Giants. Now, in terms of total linebacker, we can zip to that real quickly. Cam Brown, Carter Coughlin, special teams, Micah McFadden, Isaiah Simmons, and Bobby Okereke. All those guys aren't shocks. Cam Brown maybe a little bit because he was injured for most of the preseason, and he didn't really play that well on defense against the Detroit Lions. Was biting on a lot of play action that he really didn't need to. So there's that. And then one surprise for me as far as the New York Giants go, they only kept 4 edge rushers. You include a guy like Boogie Basham, who should be on that list, but I guess once again, whether it's the physical part or they just screwed up on the graphic. You had Jihad Ward and Boogie Basham as the rotational guys and Kayvon and Aziz. So it wouldn't shock me if the Giants made a couple of moves for the edge room. However, what I will say is this. They do have 2 edge guys on the practice squad that are familiar with the system. So there is that. Now you move to the DB room. A lot of different guys here. You got Deontay Banks, you got Dane Belton, Cordell Flott, who's more of an outside guy right now. Trey Hawkins III, Darnay Holmes, who took a pay cut to remain with the New York Football Giants. And that wasn't a surprise to me. I thought the Giants were going to keep him initially on the 53 and then try to move him elsewhere. But they did the same thing that they did with Holmes now that they did with Darius Slayton last year. And that was having him take a pay cut to stay with the team and finish out his rookie contract. So Holmes is here. He's probably not going to get a lot of playing time, in my personal opinion, maybe on specials and some third down, which is a little bit of a worry. But Darnay Holmes is here. And listen, the competition you brought in, truthfully, wasn't very good. Rodarius Williams and Monty Oruwariye, those guys were not at Holmes' level. And Holmes is a guy who has a ton of experience at the NFL level. So you can't really take that away from him. You go to the rest of the DB room, you have a Dory Jackson, you have Bobby McCain, who was almost knocked out in terms of a roster spot by Randall Cobb because he got the concussion in week 3 against the Jets. There's a little controversy there, and I'll implement my thoughts on it in about a minute or so once we finish this off because I know it's much of a dead duck topic. Nick McLeod is interesting. I thought he was on the bubble. I had him not making the roster. But he's a guy who they're slowly transitioning back to corner. He can also play safety. Did some of that at Notre Dame. So he's a versatile piece. A lot of people will describe him as a slow cornerback. But listen, he was solid last year in that role. Obviously, there was tons of talent in the NFC East that really beat him a lot. And listen, look, he's not meant to be this great Pro Bowl corner. He is a late round undrafted free agent at that. And you know what? Once again, credits to Joe Shane for finding someone last year off the waiver wire that would really stick in really well. Also on the likes, let's get the likes up, folks. We are at 6. Let's try to get that up to 10, unless my YouTube isn't updated. So we got Xavier McKinney, Javarius Owens, and Jason Pinnock. Pinnock's at a hell of a camp. And then you also have Javarius Owens, who got hurt the last game. He was not practicing as of recently, so he might be inactive coming into week 1. That's totally fine, because if they have McCain ready, if they got McKinney ready, they got Belton ready, Pinnock ready, it's not going to really be an issue. And Owens, once again, he's not going to have a big role. It's not Trey Hawkins where he's going to be starting outside week 1. Javarius Owens, he had a solid preseason, but nothing over Xavier McKinney, Dane Belton, Bobby McCain, or Jason Pinnock. So I do want to talk about quickly that little Hard Knocks clip that everybody's talking about, and it's riling up for everybody. I did watch the full episode of Hard Knocks, and I'm gonna say, listen, look, I'm sticking with Jihad Ward. I'm sticking with my buddy Hottie, and I know that might piss off some Jeff fans that we do have that are loyal to this channel and whatnot, but I'm gonna be honest with you. Once again, I'm sticking with him because it's a little, I'm trying to put myself in his shoes. It's a little, I would say, effed up to see some people laughing after they just injured your teammate. Yeah, it was a stupid mistake. You laugh about it, but that got Bobby McCain a concussion, and that could have cost him a roster spot if you want to go into depths about it. And then Jihad Ward, it's not like he threw Aaron Rodgers to the ground, people. It's not like he threw Aaron Rodgers to the ground, roughing the passer, late hit. No, it was just a shove, maybe 3 steps after the fact. Then Rodgers taking exception to it and saying, I don't know who you are. Well, Jihad Ward had a pretty big quarterback hit against the Packers last year on Aaron Rodgers in London. So that's not necessarily true. I think that's just a lot of NFL players saying that really as of recently. I know Kayvon said that. Aaron Rodgers just said that. Trust me, a lot of these players know who a lot of these players are. So it's not necessarily the truth that's coming out of their mouths. But I just I'm not an Aaron Rodgers hater. I like the fact that he's in New York because he is a Hall of Famer. I know he's known as this playoff choker, but come on, dude. I mean, seriously? And then people were going out there attacking Chris Bisignano of the newspaper, what is it, the Giants newspaper podcast or something like that. They do a decent job over there. People were attacking him. And now I'm not talking about Giant fans. I'm talking about Jeff fans because he had a reaction to it. I'm like, you guys are so soft because y'all are relying on hope. Y'all relying that Aaron Rodgers stays healthy. Y'all are relying that this offensive line is actually something. So, I mean, we'll get to the trash talk way weeks down. It's not necessarily something to get big into here. I just wanted to provide my thoughts on it. So, we got 2 segments left, no waiver claims, and then position grades. So, as far as no waiver claim goes, I was a little shocked that the New York Giants didn't put any in because I feel like if they put some in, maybe they would have gotten 1 or 2 players. Now, they didn't. They didn't get anybody. They tried to claim Nick Broker, who I mentioned earlier, was a guy drafted by the Buffalo Bills, 7th round at Ole Miss. He ended up going to the Houston Texans on their active roster. So the Giants missed out there. I'm not going to blame them. Obviously, it's a waiver wire. The Houston Texans had a higher priority. If they were 3rd or 2nd, and the Giants were 26th, 27th, 28th. So there's that. Once again, not mad about it. I would still like them to attack swing tackle. Is backup O-line secure enough is one of my questions. And I'm going to say no. Offensive guard, it's a different story. I'm going to say I'm slightly less worried about that. If they made a move in the offensive line room in terms of the guards, I would not have a problem with that because I'm sort of comfortable right now with Lemieux, McKeithen, Azudu, and then the starting guards. Tackle is where I worry a little bit. Now, you could say, okay, Josh Azudu can play tackle and Marcus McKeithen can play tackle. Azudu has not really gotten time in the NFL at offensive tackle, so you can't really say that with full-fledged confidence. Marcus McKeithen's coming into legitimately his first season. Yes, he was drafted last year as a 5th-round pick out of UNC, but he only played in, I don't know, a quarter, not even of an NFL game. And that was the preseason. So how are you going to rely on that? And that brings you back to Matt Peart. And I know, yes, I'm going to be picky here. That's the one thing I'll say. I'm going to be picky. I don't necessarily trust Matt Peart as a swing tackle. Dennis Kelly is still out there. Ty Nsekhe still out there. You still have a couple of different names. I think Connor Galvin right now is either on a practice squad or he's a free agent. He's an undrafted free agent out of Baylor. But I still kind of would trust him over Matt Parrott because it's not like Matt Parrott was just, oh, he was bad in camp and then he was good in the preseason games, or he was good in camp, bad in one preseason game, and then just okay in the next two. No, he was horrible all preseason. So this is, yes, where I'm going to get picky a little bit. Dennis Kelly is a 33-year-old veteran who's played for the Packers. He's played for the Titans. He's played for the Eagles. He's started games at the NFL level, to where Matt Parrott, he's on the last year of his contract. You could cut him, save a little bit of money, and just be done with the whole situation. But I think as Giant fans, we have to hope for two things. Number one, that Evan Neal and a guy like Andrew Thomas stay healthy, because as of right now, if you're looking at the practice squad, behind Matt Parrott, there's not much experience at all. Tyree Phillips, I would have at least quarters zipped my mouth if Phillips was still on the practice squad. He's not. He was cut for Jalen Thomas. So there's that. And then behind him, you have Jalen Mayfield, who was going to be honest with you, a draft bust, a draft miss by the Falcons. So once again, you got to hope for the Giants make a move later in the week or before week one or some point in the season to try to oust Matt Parrott of the swing tackle spot because he didn't look good in the preseason, or just that those guys do not get hurt. Also, backup cornerback. How am I with that situation? I think we're pretty solid there. You know, your starters are going to be Adoree', Trey Hawkins, and Deonte Banks, with Nick McLeod, Darnay Holmes, and Cordell Flott behind. Flott is now much of an outside corner, which is what I wanted him to be. It's going to be interesting to see how the Giants do some defensive rotations, because there's going to be tough competition. There's going to be good wide receivers on the outside, not just in the slot, like we'll see the next week with CeeDee Lamb. But Darnay Holmes, as much as I dislike him, he's a guy that brings experience. Nick McLeod played solid for us last year, knows the system. And then Cordell Flott in there as well. And if you need to, Bobby McCain too. And you won't really have to touch the practice squad in terms of those backup corners. And then as far as edge goes, I think it is a little surprising that the New York Giants didn't attack another edge in free agency or whatever. In terms of that, I think the Giants are solid there. You do have, once again, Kayvon Aziz, Jihad Ward, and then Boogie Basham. With two guys on the practice squad, let's just hope that Oshane Ximines does not get elevated. I think he will at some point during the season. I think you're limited to 2 to 3 elevations. Tamon Fox, he's a guy that can stop the run, decent as a pass rusher. So I would hope he gets the prioritization over Oshane Ximines. But with those guys on the practice squad, I guess they needed to shore up other spots for other guys. So once again, not too much of a worry in that aspect. Isn't there an lineman on the Lions we could have signed? Yeah, Connor Galvin was one of the main names out there. Undrafted free agent out of Baylor, played really well for the Lions this preseason. I believe he's on the practice squad, if I'm not mistaken. The Giants possibly could still claim him. Yeah, he is. Let me see real quickly. Yeah, he's on the practice squad. So the Giants, if they wanted to, they could make a move for him. But right now, once again, yes, he is on the practice squad of the Lions. Went unclaimed, surprisingly, because of the way he played in the preseason. So now let's get to something last before we kick it out here for you guys. Let's do before season position grades. Next week, not going to have time for it because we have an interview with the Giants beat reporter. As of right now, and I usually don't say, okay, we have an interview, because sometimes people will, just not show up or whatever, but we've been doing it almost 4 years with this guy. And then next Saturday, we're going to have on Tom Ryle, who we had on last year for the Cowboys preview. So, before season position grades, let's talk about quarterback. I'm going to go with a B. I'm going to go with a straight up B right now. Daniel Jones is the main focus of this. Tyrod Taylor, not really much. Daniel Jones, coming into the season, he's improved. You expect him to throw more touchdowns. You expect him to get more touchdowns overall, more yards. He needs to get to 4,000, probably at least for this season. And just over 20 passing touchdowns, maybe 25 because of the contract he was given. He's got the weapons now. Now, the offensive line's still a little questionable there, but Jalen Hyatt, Paris Campbell, those are guys that get open. Those are guys that get separation. And Daniel Jones, I could grade him better once the next time we do this, but he's got to show it to me a little bit more. I'm proud of the way he kind of made improvements last year with all the offensive systems he's been through. So that's a B for Mr. Daniel Jones, really, in the quarterback room. In terms of the running back room, I'm going to give it an A minus. I'm going to give it an A minus. Saquon Barkley, he's coming off another 1,000-yard season. Hopefully the Giants don't wear and tear him like last year. I don't think they will need to, but you got Breida behind him who's solid, Brightwell who's solid, Eric Gray, still a little questionable about because of the way he looked in the preseason, but it's also going to be what do the Giants want him to be in terms of a role player? Brightwell, I mean, they could cut him after next year. Does he take a spot as a kick returner? Breida's only on a one-year contract, so they can make a couple of different moves in a couple of different areas beyond this season. But really, the reason for the running back room to be A minus is because of Saquon Barkley. Let's go to the wide receiver position. I'm going to go B plus here. I'm going to go B plus. And, you could say, well, you're being harsh or you're being, too scared to give out an A. This wide receiver group does need to show it to me. This is not some, star wide receiver group, Jalen, not Jalen Waddle or Tyreek Hill like it is in Miami, but it is a solid wide receiver group. Jalen Hyatt, Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton. There are, guys on this roster that can get separation, that can catch the football. Not many drop problems for some of these guys except for Darius Slayton, but he can be explosive. He was a big part of that offense last year, really in the second half. Explosive plays for Daniel Jones. You bring in Paris Campbell, you bring in Jalen Hyatt. It's a respectable unit. You don't necessarily just have to worry about Darren Waller and Saquon Barkley. You could also worry about whether Slayton's going to take you deep, whether Hyatt's going to beat you. I know we obviously have that Sauce Gardner thing. I'm not going to get into that because we went on it on the Boys and the Apple podcast episode. But it's a solid wide receiver group, and I think the grade can definitely increase depending on a couple of the different guys' production. Let's take a look at the comments section. B, even after the high five. If you're talking about the quarterbacks, yeah, I'm still doing with a B. Peace and blessings. Yes, if you guys haven't already, please go sub to Coach Ed Gladney's Amazing Sports channel. He does a lot of different things. He also runs the podcast with our buddy on Popular Opinion Sports, Heart of the City, every Tuesday night at 8:30. Let's move to tight end. I'm going to give this a flat out A+. Why not? Let's give it an A+. Darren Waller, he comes in. He is the best weapon on offense. Daniel Bellinger behind him, who really had a solid rookie season, was, poked in the eye socket last year. So he had some time off. And then Lawrence Cager, he's a solid number 3. Now, he is more of a wide receiver, but if you get a mismatch against tight ends, Cager has the speed, not the blocking ability, but he has the speed. So I'm going to go tight end A+. Offensive tackle, that's a tough one. I'm going to go ahead and say B+. Now, Andrew Thomas is an all-pro, right? We know that. He's an all-pro. He's a Pro Bowler. That does not need to be discussed. But Evan Neal needs to take a big jump this year. He does. Be at least solid. Now, I know that there's going to be expectations because he was 7th overall. Ryan Ramczyk, you need to be up there with Ramczyk and some of these other good right tackles like Lane Johnson in the league. I want him to at least give a solid amount of time to Daniel Jones to where Daniel Jones can either recognize the pressure on the right or he has enough time to get the football out. Evan Neal needs to make a big jump this season, and it's also going to be on the coaching staff to help him make that big jump. And then as far as the backups go, McKeithen you can't really make a grade on, and then Matt Parrott, not great there. I would probably give him a D in an individual grade. Let's talk about the offensive guard room before we go to the defense. Offensive guard, I'm going to be blunt here. I'm going to give it a C+. Now, some may not like the grade. I'm going to grade harsh. Ben Bredeson, very solid last year. He's honestly coming into be one of my favorite Giant players. Going to be honest there. Didn't expect him to really make that jump. I thought Shane Lemieux or Max Garcia would have gotten the left guard spot last year. Bredeson was a solid piece. He really was. Made some improvements in the running game. He was a solid pass protector, agile pass protector. You move down to the other guards. Shane Lemieux, as a backup, it's not terrible, but if he gets in a game, it's not going to be good. Mark Lewinsky, I mean, we know what to expect at this point. A lot of Giant fans were underwhelmed, as was I last year at Lewinsky's play because he was mostly solid in the running game. Definitely against, Matt Ioannidis and some of the other guys in the NFC East that we faced last year. He was overwhelmed by bigger defensive linemen, and that's his main issue. Upper body strength and all that sort of stuff and pass protecting. So that's where the grade kind of goes down a little bit. And Josh Azudu, I mean, he had a I don't know, below average rookie season last year. If you want to call it that, I know that's being harsh, but he's a rookie. In terms of last year, this year he needs to take a step up because the New York Giants, as far as I'm concerned, believe he's going to be a future part of this team, not a bench player, a starter. Glowinski is going to probably get cut next year. Going to be honest with you guys, which will prompt Azudu to move at one of the guard spots. And they need some sort of confidence to say, okay, we can cut Glowinski and have no issues. Azudu needs to make vast improvements. And I think the coaching staff needs to help him as well. So C+ as far as the guard goes. Defensive line, I'm going to go ahead and give it an A+. You got Dexter Lawrence, you got Leonard Williams. That is one of the more underrated, if not better, defensive line duos in the league. You back that up with 4 solid depth players. I mean, you got A'Shawn Robinson, who's a Super Bowl champ, Nacho, Super Bowl champ. Both can play the run really well. DJ Davidson and Jordan Riley, 2 late-round draft picks who are solid run defenders. This is probably the best defensive line room just overall that the Giants have had in a few years. And the depth is very good. So I have nothing but praises to say about this defensive line room. Let's go to the inside linebacker room. Let's go there, right? I'm going to go ahead and give it a B+ for right now. Obviously, I'm not going to count Darian Beavers, but you got, I would say, about 5 guys right now. You got Bobby Okereke and Isaiah Simmons. That's at least graded out to be a B or an A-. Okereke, never been a Pro Bowler, really showed up last year on his rookie contract, the last year of that. And, we're just looking to see, was he just playing for a contract, or is he a guy that's going to really impact this running game, sideline to sideline linebacker that can play the run really well. Isaiah Simmons, a steal of a trade for Joe Shane. He can play multiple positions, but if he's at least average and effective athletically in that inside linebacker role, that grade can go up. But right now, it's going to stay at a B+ for all linebackers. Micah McFadden, he's made vast improvements in his game. You saw that in camp. You saw that in preseason when he beat out Darian Beavers and when he beat out other guys for that backup linebacker position. I think it could be a special year for him. He's not going to have to really play as much because of Simmons, because of Okereke, but I think he's going to flourish in the spots the New York Giants really put him in. And also, it helps that you have a good 4 defensive linemen. You move backwards, really special team guys, and Cam Brown and Carter Coughlin. Coughlin's a solid guy in terms of the inside linebacker room. Now you go to outside linebacker, which is Boogie Basham, Jihad Ward, Kayvon Thibodeau, and Azeez Ojulari. I am going to give that a B+. Why do I say B+ instead of A? There's a lot of questions. Boogie Basham, Jihad Ward, it's fine. They're depth players. Kayvon Thibodeau, okay, you had a rookie year where you held a lot and all these different things. It's time now. You got to make that step. I'm not expecting double-digit sacks. I know some people are. I'm not expecting double-digit sacks for Mr. Kayvon Thibodeau because it is Wink system where you traditionally don't have that. But he needs to take a step up. He needs to be a better run defender. He needs to have a couple of different pass rush moves moved in there. He needs to do karate a little bit more against some of these offensive tackles. And this, once again, he just needs to make a big step this year. It's not like he had an Evan Neal year last year where he struggled, but this needs to be a big jump. Now, I would say, once again, this would be an A group if Azeez Ojulari was healthy for most of last year. A lot of Giant fans, a lot of people are putting expectations around him. This guy needs to stay healthy. I believe he's the X factor for this defense. I really do. You take corner out of the position, even with corner, in my opinion. Azeez Ojulari, I believe, is an X factor. Because if he gets hurt, Kayvon's left in on an island. And if he doesn't improve, then he's got to be facing, top-tier tackles and getting shut down, which leaves Tamon Fox and O'Shane Zimenez and Boogie Basham and all those guys on the other side. And they're not getting anywhere, which could really not help the secondary because you do have 2 rookies back there. So Azeez Ojulari, he needs to stay healthy. And if he does, that grade's going to go up to an A. But right now it's a B+. Cornerback room, I might say the same, honestly. I'm going to go with an A- for right now. Call me a homer. I'm going to go with an A-. Adoree Jackson, if he did not get injured in that stupid little stunt that we pulled last year, putting him in punt returner, I think he plays the full 17 games, really 16 because of that last game against Philly. Trey Hawkins has come along surprisingly. He was a 6th-round pick out of ODU. He's a guy that's very physical, played well in the preseason. I think he'll definitely get his fair share of tests. So in terms of him, I'm expecting some things this year. I will expect a fair share of struggles. Deonte Banks, same thing. But once again, first-round pick. First-round cornerback. I'm expecting some good things to see out of him. I'm expecting him at least to get better down the stretch. I'm not expecting him to be Sauce Gardner off the bat. And then you got solid depth there. You got McLeod, Bobby McCain if need to be, Darnay Holmes, and Cordell Flott. Listen, if one of those rookies are struggling, shove in Cordell Flott. He's actually a good outside corner, compared to what other people think as well. Got coach's grades here. I'm going to go over what coach thinks in just a second as I round out my grades because we got 2 more positions to go. We got safety. I'm going to go ahead and say A-2 because Xavier McKinney, I think he could do better than he did last year. Obviously missed part of last year with that ATV incident where he busted up his hand. So there's that. Jason Pinnock, I mean, I'm not expecting what he did in camp to translate over into the regular season 100%, but you also got another year of Dane Belton where that collarbone was bothering him a little bit. And then you also got Javarius Owens and Bobby McCain, who are solid role players in terms of that. So I'm going to go A-. And then special teams, Graham Gano, Jamie Gillen. I'm going to go with a B-. Graham Gano's always going to be the automatic kicker we know him to be, at least for right now. But Jamie Gillen, I think he made some strides in preseason. However, I think that needs to show up in the regular season or else the Giants can have a tough time on specials. Plus, the unit really didn't show that much promise in the preseason in terms of tackling and allowing big returns. Maurice Alexander and Xavier Gibson had some good returns against the Giants, for example, but that's not just the scheme. That's not just the special teams coach, Thomas Begay. That's also the talent of players you put on there, and most of those Giants were cut, by the way. So coach's grades here real quickly. Quarterback, B+, running back, A-, tight end, A-, wide receiver, B, offensive tackle, B-, frickin' Parrot. Yeah, no, man. I have that worry too. Center, we got a B. We got guard as a C+. I think that's an honest grade right there, coach. Coach is not fucking around. Interior defensive lineman, A+. Edge, A-. Inside linebacker, B+. Cornerback, B-. Nickel corner, C+. That's a good point because we really don't have a true guy. Let's see. We got safety, B. We got kicker, A+. We got punter, C. And long snapper, B. Okay, those are some very fair grades. But, folks, we've been here for 1 hour and 2 minutes. I'm going to advertise this one more time. Almost put the wrong graphic up. Excuse me. Once again, sponsored by SeatGeek. You get $20 off your ticket order with the promo code Big Blue in the Bronx. We appreciate you guys being here. Like, comment, subscribe to all the good stuff. The next time we'll be live, I think, is going to be on Sunday. We got a doubleheader for baseball and a lot more content coming for you guys. There's going to be a hype video this year for the Giants. So I'm working on that. We're working on a couple of different things here. Not just me, but the entire Big Blue crew and also the team behind me and John and Luca. So we appreciate you guys. Like, comment, subscribe to all the good stuff. Also, 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Appreciate you guys. And I'll talk to you next time. Peace.